Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Dribble Drive podcast. I am your host, Austin Render, along with fill-in co-host today. Tyler Danburg is joining us, play-by-play voice for the Ohio State Buckeyes. Dalton is MIA today. It's a travel day for the Spartans coming back from the Bahamas. Boo-hoo. So Tyler Danburg is subbing in for us. Tyler, thanks for coming on, and we're going to talk about your Buckeyes because you guys had a great week there in the Bahamas. But how was your time down at Bahamas?
It was an absolute blast, Austin, and we wish Dalton the best as him and the Spartans make the trek back. But it was an awesome trip. It helps, too, when the team goes 2-0, but from the weather to the whole Bahamas Grand Hyatt, the tournament is so well laid out. Hospitality is great. Broadcast setup's great. So absolutely no complaints. It was a great week.
Love that. And if Dalton's listening to us on his flight home, just be prepared for the Arctic tundra you're about to fly back into. That was a jarring experience for me last night. We got off the plane. It's like, oh, this is not Fort Myers. And I'm sure you had that same experience getting back to Columbus. But we trudge on because this is a big episode, Tyler. And before we jump into it, just want to let people know we are on the Back Home Network YouTube channel. If you're watching us here, we appreciate it. If you are listening to us on Apple and Spotify, we appreciate that as well. If you want to see us in video form with all the graphics and the visual aids we add to the show, and you want to see our lovely faces, you can do that on the Back Home Network YouTube channel. Give us a subscribe there. We'll let you know when we go live. Hopefully, once we get Dalton back, we can do some more live shows here coming up. But we got a lot to get to today. We're going to talk about UCLA's I was going to say up and down week, but it was, I guess, a down and up week for UCLA. We knew it was going to be a fun week for them, and we got plenty to talk about. Maryland gets a big win over Kentucky. Ohio State, Michigan State, Nebraska wins some hardware in their MTEs. Indiana goes toe-to-toe with Iowa State. We have some other stars of the week we've got to talk about. And then the big part of this, Tyler, we're resetting because this is Big Ten week. We got Big Ten games coming up this weekend. We want to set the table for, I think, 4 really good matchups in the conference that we're going to talk about here coming up at the end of the show. But we'll get to your Buckeyes in a minute, Tyler. But I do think the story, at least to start, is UCLA. And this was the matchup we were all looking forward to on Wednesday, which was number 4 Texas, number 3 UCLA. And if you were watching this game, about a quarter and a half in, you kind of had a feeling of where this game was going. Texas was dominant. Texas was in their face defensively. This was an all-around impressive performance. Now, they went from up 23 to up 4, and things got tight there in the fourth quarter, but Texas withstood the charge. And Dalton and I have been wondering, Tyler, how do you beat UCLA? They've looked so dominant. And they looked dominant in the 2 games after this. But Texas, I think, showed a blueprint that not every team is equipped to use, but Texas was. And that's if you can apply a ton of guard pressure, it makes life really difficult for UCLA because they were having trouble getting the ball to Lauren Betts. They were having trouble getting even into their sets offensively. And it just really felt like Texas took UCLA out of its rhythm.
It certainly did. And I think it starts with Rory Harmon and what she did on the offensive and defensive side of the floor. I mean, 26 points, and she really helped the Longhorns just have that separation too early on. Credit to UCLA and their ability to come back and trim that deficit. I think that's something that probably Corey Close and her Bruins are going to take as a positive from that game. You know, anytime that, this is a top 5 matchup. So anytime you can show that you can overcome that adversity, even though you didn't come out of the winning end, that's probably going to be a win that could propel you forward into conference play.
Yeah, they got 17 out of Gianna Niebken, 17 from Kiki Rice, who went on a big run there in that fourth quarter that got him back into the game. They only played 6 players in this game. Angela Dugalich came off the bench, as she typically does. She's probably going to be the 6th player of the year in the Big Ten Conference this year. But they didn't use anybody else. Lauren Betts was held pretty quiet, 8.7 rebounds. They had 20 turnovers, which I thought was one of the big stories in this game. And that's part of playing Texas. Texas is going to heat you up defensively, and UCLA did not handle it all that well. They lost Lauren Betts, though, for the next game against Duke. They would just thump the Blue Devils, though, 89-59, even without Lauren Betts. They got a big day out of Gabriela Jaquez, who we're going to talk about a lot through this show. She's been terrific this year. She had 23. Charlize Ledger-Walker, how about this stat line? 20 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals, 5 of 9 from 3. Pretty good stuff from Charlize Ledger-Walker. I think that's what has scared those of us who are like, how do you beat UCLA? Is they can beat you in so many different ways, and that's what was so surprising, that Texas was able to shut down all of those avenues. But Tennessee, which we'll talk about here in a second, and Duke were not able to do that, Tyler. I don't know what your takeaways have been from seeing UCLA through, I think it's 8-9 games of the season now. This team, just when they're at their best, which was not the Texas game, but certainly was these next couple, they look unbeatable. And this game in particular was even without Lauren Betts.
And I think that's probably been one of the bigger takeaways is I think UCLA has done a great job of scheduling. To have 4 top 25 opponents through the first 7 games, I think is really big, because it shows that they're going to learn a lot about their team, and not just because of what's happening internally, but they're also playing really good teams to get a grip of how they're going to go about this season, because this could be one of, if not the deepest Big Tens. And then obviously it could make for a great tournament. I think another thing that we've learned is obviously they're going to need Lauren Betts. There's no doubt about it. They're a little bit more, you said playing 6 players, 7 players, maybe 8, depending on the situation. They've got their rotation set. And a lot of that rotations being set is dependent on what 52 is doing in the middle. But one of the biggest things is that they know that they can have some pieces around her. Ledger-Walker she's a glue player. No doubt about it. And she is going to play a key role in how this Bruins team goes down the stretch. Obviously, Kiki Rice is a phenomenal player, and she's been that running mate for Betts. But for Jaquez and Ledger-Walker, for what they're doing to begin the season, that shows that UCLA is going to have some depth within a smaller rotation.
Yeah, and it's good to see them win this game without Betts and show that they can play without her. But you're right, Tyler. This is a thin rotation. We all thought Tamia Gardner would be a part of that. She has been injured all season so far. We weren't sure how much Sienna Betts would play, but she has not been available at all this season either. So making things a little bit thinner for Corey Close and company. But again, they bounced back with this win over Duke, and that was a day later. So impressive to put that behind them quickly. And then they come home and it's like, well, you get Tennessee. Like, it didn't get a whole lot easier. And this was a really impressive offensive performance by UCLA. Gabriela Jaquez is having a phenomenal season. 29 more points for her in this game, 5 of 6 from 3. Kiki Rice, a double-double. They got good production out of Neepkins and Dugalich. Betts did return only 7 points and 4 rebounds. So again, a second straight game where they were able to do it kind of without Lauren Betts. I mean, she was there and she's a factor. And even when she doesn't score, she attracts so much attention that does help just having her on the floor. But they're finding other ways to win. This was probably their worst defensive performance, but it didn't really matter because of what their offense was doing. And that's what scares you about UCLA is I think they can win a game that's 1st to 90. And they can also win a game where it's 1st to 65. I think their defense is good enough to do that. And so that's what makes this team so fun is the range of outcomes. I don't know if you saw the icy handshake after the game from Janiah Barker. Corey Close said she wrote her a letter and they gave her Final Four ring. But after the game, Janiah Barker made it very apparent that she was not shaking Corey Close's hand. She reached in and then went like psych, like a 7-year-old would do to you. But Janiah Barker did it to her old head coach. Janiah Barker now at Tennessee had a very good game.
But, yeah, she did have a good game. But she also was held in that fourth quarter too. She had 11 points in the first quarter. She had 3 in the last 3. Yeah,
and it feels like Angela Dugalich is kind of filling her role and more for what she did she was the 6th player of the year in the conference last year. It looks like Angela Dugalich is right on her way to be that this year. And then you're getting London Jones numbers and more out of Charlize Ledger-Walker and what she's been able to add to the team now that she's healthy. So UCLA does drop a game. They're probably going to drop, well, certainly going to drop behind Texas, who had a phenomenal week. They beat UCLA and South Carolina, might be the second best team, even the best team in the country, right up there with UConn. So I would imagine UCLA will drop at least one. I don't know if they'll drop much further than that. I think beating Duke by 30, beating Tennessee by 22, buoys it a little bit for UCLA. But they do drop one and looked a little human, I think, for everybody else. So certainly for Michigan. I don't know if this changes your opinion, Tyler. I know you guys there in Columbus don't like to talk about the team up north, but this is tough because my normal co-host Dalton also doesn't like to talk about Michigan. But did that game against Texas make you think, okay, they are human, there are ways to beat them, and Michigan does have a shot to win this conference?
I think the idea that Michigan has a shot to win this conference became apparent after what they did against UConn, losing to 3 in a game like that, finding a way to come back and have a lead in that ball game and show that they could go toe to toe with right now the primo team in the country. I mean, UConn, there's no ifs, ands, or buts that team is the top ranked team. I think that was really where the eyebrows were raised when you think, oh, wow, this Michigan team, I mean, obviously having those 3 all Big Ten freshmen come in as sophomores and especially what Silas Swords and Olivia Olson can do, I think that certainly started to raise some hairs that this Wolverines team can certainly make some noise in the Big Ten. But I think that, showing what UCLA did against Texas, maybe also too, like going back to the 4 ranked teams that they've played to start the year, they have one of the strongest starts to a schedule this year in the country. Yep. So they're going to be incredibly battle tested heading into Big Ten play, and that's certainly going to give them an edge.
Well, and I remember that being something that Matt Park mentioned last week, the voice of the Wolverines, saying they're not going to be scared to come to Ann Arbor because they've played all these top teams. And I think we all wanted to see UCLA against South Carolina. We didn't get it, obviously, but they will go to Ann Arbor for what that's worth in the one matchup between those 2 teams. It will be at Michigan. But I do think that there was a point there at the beginning of the season where we're like, okay, it's UCLA and it's everybody else. And it does feel like Michigan's done more to jump up than UCLA has done to fall down, but Michigan has inserted themselves into that conversation. Another team that might be creeping into that conversation, Tyler, is Maryland. We hadn't seen them get tested too much so far. They had beaten a decent Princeton team, but Maryland goes to Puerto Rico and wins this game by 8 and really kind of controlled the game from the start. And what I thought was most promising, if you're a Maryland fan, is that your all Big Ten players and Kayleen Smeichel and Yarden Garzone were your leaders in this game. They had both Kayleen Smeichel had been hurt. Yarden Garzone had not been shooting the 3 ball very well. And they were both your best players in this game. Smeichel goes for 22. Garzone goes for 17, going 5 for 10 from 3. And they forced 20 Kentucky turnovers. They really were the better team in this game from the jump. And I don't think Maryland's a perfect team by any means. They start kind of 5 guards. Saylor Poffenbarger and Yarden Garzone are wings. They can go into the post if they need to, but they don't really play a forward anymore. Izzy Mamudu does not start for Maryland anymore. So they go a little bit smaller, but this is working, and Brenda Freese is figuring it out as they go. It's a new team again. It's what they do each year. Now we're going to talk about your power rankings in a moment that you sent me before the show. You do have Maryland in this conversation. So tell me what's impressed you about the Terps so far.
Well, the defense, first off, you talk about control. They were completely in control. This Kentucky team, against some good opponents too, was averaging over 82 a contest, and Maryland held them to 66. They also were efficient from the free throw line. They shot 91%. They're a good free throw shooting team. And I think the biggest thing is 4 starters in double figures against Kentucky. And they've got a really good starting lineup. And it, like you said, Austin, it works. And the only in this game, the only starter not in double figures was Aluccio Kamwana, the Duke transfer, but she makes an impact beyond the stat sheet a little bit, and she's good in the paint, and she's very athletic and can play really well. This Maryland team's a team that I am high on, and Brenda Fries, that her resume goes without being said. And I think, having Garrison and Schmeichel is a really potent double trouble in this Big Ten, and I think Schmeichel's now working on 20 10-point games in her 2 years at Maryland, coming from Rutgers. She can score the ball incredibly well. But I do think that this team is probably going to go as they go, and this game against Kentucky was another indicator of that.
One of 6 undefeated teams left in the Big Ten right now. Maryland is with a 9-0 record. This was a good test for them. They don't have a whole lot of meat left in their non-conference schedule, but they will have one of the 4 big games we're going to talk about at the end of the show, because they're on the road at Minnesota this weekend to start Big Ten play. But again, I just think the promising thing is your stars in the biggest game you've played to this point came to play, and they had been a little bit hot and cold so far this season, but that's what you want to see out of your stars, is they step up and they deliver. They did not shoot well in this game, 35%. They shot much better against Hofstra the next day. But I think Maryland would like to throw their hat in the ring at the top of the Big Ten Conference. They're a top 10 team, and certainly deservedly so. All right, we've talked about the two biggest wins of the weekend. I think the third biggest win is your Buckeyes. So let's give you the floor here, Tyler. I want to start with the Belmont game, though, because Buckeyes were tied in this game with Belmont going into the fourth quarter. Jelani Cambridge was great all tournament long. She was the tournament MVP. But talk a little bit about the resolve you saw from Ohio State in that fourth quarter that got them the first win of the Bahamas and allowed them to then play West Virginia.
Well, for the Big Ten audience that is watching or listening to this show that don't necessarily know about Belmont, the Bruins are one of the more consistent mid-majors in the country. Bart Brooks has been there for 9 years. He's the third fastest coach to 100 wins. I mean, Belmont, they stack W's. So they're a good team. They were College Insider's number 11 mid-major team heading into that game. And the biggest thing for Ohio State at that time, Austin, the second quarter, talking to Kevin McGuff before that game, the Buckeyes head coach had called some of his second quarters dreadful, and they needed to put together a strong second frame. They've been a second half team and have gotten better as the games have gone on to start this year. And they went into that second quarter trailing 18-13, and you're thinking, oh my, like we have no idea what we're going to see here in this second quarter. And they came out raring to go in that second quarter. And really, it's a tale of the first quarter versus the final 3. And they were the better team in the second, third, and fourth quarters. And that was probably my biggest takeaway. And then rebounding, they did a great job finishing possessions with rebounds. Kylie Kitts had a double-double. Chloe Kitts, the All-American at South Carolina's sister, redshirted last year at Florida after she reclassified, actually just graduated high school early. So she spent last year at Florida learning, practicing, and coming into what would be her true freshman season. And she has started every single game for the Buckeyes, and she's been their leading rebounder. And she was the X factor in that ball game. Another cool storyline too, Jelani and Kennedy Cambridge for Ohio State. They were going up against their sister, Jo, who was a defensive stalwart at Vanderbilt. She's their all-time steals leader. And she's an assistant now at Belmont. So that was a pretty cool storyline. But the Buckeyes were really in control for those final 3 quarters.
Yeah, this was a nice win for Ohio State. So then it created this opportunity to then play West Virginia, a ranked team, an opportunity now for Ohio State to put something on their resume. And sure enough, this was a really nice comeback effort by Ohio State. They were down in the fourth quarter. And look, Jelani Cambridge is the star of this team throughout the season. She's going to get the accolades. She led the team with 22 points in this game. But Elsa Lemula is somebody that's not going to show up on the stat sheet, but she was big. Dalton was there. He was watching. They had just arrived, so he was giving me text updates because I refused to pay for Flow Hoops. I was getting text updates from Dalton. It sounded like Elsa Lemula made some big plays down the stretch.
She did. This is a game that is very hard to win because Ohio State had 4 players foul out. They had 3 of their top 4 scorers foul out. Jelani Cambridge was the first to foul out. Her sister Kennedy, who's been the backbone defensively of this team, she fouled out. Those were the first 2 players to foul out. And at that time, they were down by 5. And West Virginia, they've got so much size in the front court with Kiera Wheeler and Jordan Thomas. And you're by the end of the game, when it's a 1-score ball game, Ohio State's mainly got their reserves out there. They've got 11 players on the roster. It's a little bit more of a smaller size, but it may be more of a 1 through 11 team than we've seen from these Buckeyes teams in years past. And they found a way to win. Like Elsa Lemula, you talk about going through a lot. She had multiple injuries in the offseason, came back to be ready game 1, missed the game before the Belmont game against Kent State, and then came back, played a little bit, but off the bench in both Belmont and the West Virginia game. They called her number, and they needed her big time. She had the go-ahead bucket on a jump hook with the right hand, little baby hook in the middle of the lane, down 80-79. And then on the other end, she blocked 2 shots inside of the final 2 minutes. She had the game-winning rebound off a missed free throw. And yeah, that's right. West Virginia, that's why you got to make your free throws. This is going to be an important thing for any team. But West Virginia was down 83-80. And they sent Sydney Shaw to the line. She got fouled in the right corner on going up for a 3. And she misses her first free throw. And so she makes her second. She's got to just chuck the third charity toss off the backboard and rim and try to get something. Elsa Lemula use that 6'6" frame to grab the rebound. I think her confidence skyrocketed from that game. And in talking to her before yesterday's game, I think she got a sense that she could belong in physical matchups. I think that was one of the biggest things she learned from that game.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think Ohio State showing that even with the turnover on this roster, they are still a factor in the Big Ten Conference. I think a team that was kind of the forgotten team in the offseason. Now the media and the coaches still put them in the top 5 preseason. I kind of was a little bit more skeptical of Ohio State coming into the year, but so far they've passed all the tests outside, obviously, UConn, which UConn's going to do that to a lot of teams this season. I don't think Ohio State's a contender for the Big Ten title, but I think Ohio State is comfortably in that next tier and a team that's going to be a hard out throughout the season of the Big Ten. So Ohio State gets a nice win over West Virginia, and they win some hardware. Michigan State also won some hardware down in the Bahamas at the Baja Mar tournament. Michigan State 72, Clemson 64. So I texted Dalton last night because I'm looking at the stats after we landed, and obviously they win this game, and you're looking at the stats. Okay, well, Michigan State shot the ball really well. They shot 59% from the floor, 6 of 9 from 3. All right, good. Well, Clemson only shot 39% from the floor, 30% from 3. So in my head, I'm like, okay, well, Michigan State must have turned the ball over a lot. They didn't. Michigan State must have been out rebounded or something. It wasn't. And I'm like, how in the world did they get to this score? So I texted Dalton, and he said, I have no idea. He said Michigan State was like the better team, was much better than Clemson, and somehow it just kind of remained a tight game. But Michigan State gets the win, and they stay undefeated. They haven't really been tested that much this year. This was their biggest test so far. They pass it. Kennedy Blair continues to just produce for Michigan State, a former walk-on, double-double, 22 and 12. And she did have 7 turnovers, but also had 5 assists. So a little bit of the good and the bad. Knocked down 3 of her 4 3-pointers. Rashonda Jones had a big week down there in the Bahamas, 17 points a game in her 2 games. Grace Van Sluten's doing her thing. No Theron Halleck in this game for Michigan State. That's another theme, Tyler. I don't know if you've noticed around the Big Ten, a lot of DNPs right now for some important players. We touched on Lauren Betts. Theron Halleck did not play. Iowa had 3 players that did not play in their game against Fairfield. It was Chit Chat Wright. It was Emily Rodriguez and Tegan Mullaney. We're going to talk about it in a second, but Zania Soka-Guman did not play for Indiana in their game against Iowa State. Ella Dean did return. That was one that was an actual playing in the game. That was good news for Washington. We'll talk about in a minute. But injuries have been around, and they did not have Theron Halleck in this game, but still find a way to win. Michigan State's a hard team to figure out right now. I think that they have the talent and the ceiling to be a top 5, top 4 team in this league. That's where we had them preseason. But right now, it's hard to know where they stack up right now, Tyler, because they just haven't really been tested all that much.
Yeah, and being without Theron Halleck, I'm sure Dalton will tell you she's miss Michigan State. I mean, that her whole family bleeds green and white. But no, you're absolutely right. And you know, the biggest thing that was a takeaway from that Clemson game was almost 3/4 of their points came from Blair, Jones, and Van Sluten. So it's just trying to figure out, you know, who can be those extra pieces to help pitch in off the bench. You know, Mara Dykstra is somebody who could come in big. They've got some good bench pieces, and I mean, Robin Freilich is a heck of a coach, and she's got this program in trending in the incredibly right direction. But and obviously losing Halleck is a big loss. So once she comes back, that'll bolster things. But definitely seen that 53 to 72 points against the Tigers coming from just 3 players alone shows that they're going to probably need some more sources to score the ball.
There's actually a lot of that going on around the conference right now with teams that are very star dependent. Think about Penn State, very dependent on Gracie Merkel, Kaomi McMillan, and Mariah Murray. Indiana is very dependent on Shea Chesky, Lene Beaumont, and Z. Michigan State, I would say Jalen Brown is somebody off the bench that obviously was a high-level scorer at Arizona State. It's clear she's had to buy into a different role with this year's team than maybe she had with the Sun Devils last year, but certainly is a player who can go get a bucket. Michigan State's going to be a good, interesting team to watch here. They're not going to get tested much here over the next couple of weeks either. They might get, I believe it's Ole Miss that they might get in a December tournament. So that'll be something to watch for. But yeah, I mean, they're playing Wisconsin this week in their first game of the Big Ten, and all due respect to Wisconsin, they're rebuilding. It's a new coach. It's a new year. But yeah, they have the chance of getting Ole Miss in the Cherokee Invitational on December 22nd. Then they play Rutgers at home, and then it's at Indiana, Illinois, Washington, Oregon. So then it starts to get real for Michigan State. But right now, a team that's a top 20 team in the country, they've got a good net, and still undefeated. And winning is better than losing always in this sport. Indiana had an interesting week down in Fort Myers. I thought showed a lot of guts. They beat Gonzaga 76-72. I don't know if this is the Gonzaga team of old, the Gonzaga team that kind of always dominated the WCC. They're good. They've got a lot of playmakers. Indiana just found a way to win this game, and they've last couple games have cut down on their turnovers. But really, this is the one I want to touch on is the Iowa State game. They lose this game, and you look at this score, and you see 106-95, and you're like, well, nobody played defense in this game. I honestly, it's a weird feeling. I thought Indiana played pretty good defense while giving up 106 points, which is kind of wild to think about. So here's the thing. Audie Crooks is a star. Audie Crooks is unbelievable. And when I found out before the game that Zania Soka-Guman's not going to play, it's a real bummer because I really wanted to see that matchup. It was going to be the speed and athleticism of Z against the size and the physicality of Audie Crooks, 2 different playing styles. It's going to be a lot of fun to see those 2 match up, and we didn't get it. And that was a bummer. But I thought Indiana made her. So she made 19 shots in this game. I think she was 19 for 25 for a school record 47 points. Indiana made her go to her left shoulder a lot. They made her go into fadeaways a lot. They made her take several jumpers. She was just making the shots that on the scouting report, you say, this is what we want Audie Crooks to do if we have a chance to slow her down. They made her do that stuff, and she was terrific and just kept making those shots. And I think they're built a little bit, Tyler, like the men's Purdue team with Zach Edey, where you've got this dominant big who attracts so much attention, but you can't double her because you surround her with 45% three-point shooters in Kenzie Hare and Addie Brown and Aaliyah Jackson. They can all shoot the three. Jada Williams is the one player on the scouting report. You're like, okay, 20% three-point shooter. She's a facilitator. You can leave her a little bit. And then she drained 3 threes yesterday. So it's just one of those things where Indiana, I thought they executed their game plan pretty well. It's just Iowa State has so many ways to beat you, and it's a lot easier for Iowa State to get to 90 points than for most other teams in the country. So I thought Indiana's offense, they scored over 1.2 points per possession in this game and lost. So I thought the Indiana offense was really good. I think Shea Chesky's a star. And this is the first year that Shea has been the number one on opponents' scouting reports, and she just keeps finding ways to win. She averaged 29 points a game in the 3 games we played down in Fort Myers. She's leading the Big Ten in scoring. She really tried to will this team in this game. She fouled out with a couple minutes left, just shy of her career high in points. But I think Indiana is again, it's not a team that's going to try and win the Big Ten title, I don't think. But this is a team that I think is an NCAA tournament team. This is a team that's young, has a lot to build off of. And if you get Xenia Soka-Guman back in there, I think this is a team that can give some teams some fits because I think they're smart. I think this coaching staff puts them in good game plans, and they showed that against Iowa State. They played with a lot of heart. If they can bring that intensity to the Big Ten, they're going to win a lot of games in this conference and could be a team that sneaks up on you and goes 12-6, 11-7 in conference play. But it was a fun game. It was a 3-point game at the half, 7-point game going to the fourth quarter. Iowa State kind of stretched it out at the end. But it's fun. But Audie Crooks is really good, Tyler. She's a really good basketball player.
She really is. And not many days you shoot over 50% for the field, score 95-plus points, and lose the game. And that's probably a testament to Crooks. And let me ask you this, and wow, that sounded a lot like Larry David, but Jada Williams and Addie Brown, they combined for 40 points. But with Shea Chesky and Audie Crooks, I know they play different positions, 2 completely different players stylistically. Yeah. But were there times in that game, Austin, where it felt like there were just 2 players on the floor?
Yes. Yes. And it did feel like in the second half, Audie Crooks certainly got hers, but it felt like Bill Fenley made a concerted effort to get Addie Brown going in the second half. And I think there was a little bit of a mismatch there in the 4 position for her. So it did feel like in the second half, she got going. Jada Williams is so fast. She has such a quick, I'd love to see her against Jelani Cambridge. That'd be a lot of fun. But it did feel like at times it was Shea Chesky creating on one end. It was dump it in to Audie Crooks and get a bucket on the other end, and back and forth we went. And then the 2 of them combined for 85 points in this game. So, I mean, it was a special performance from both of them. Indiana did not shoot the 3 well in this game. They shot, I think, 30%, 32% from 3, and they made a few at the end. It was really a 20 to 25% shooting night from 3. And yet still found a way to score 95 points. So I think Shea Chesky scored 38 going 1 for 6 from 3. So if you can find a way to make some of those threes, that game looks a little bit different. But again, I also think it looks a little different if Z plays. So that's the big asterisk there. But I think Indiana displayed a lot of fight and showed that they're a team that's going to be a tough out in the Big Ten. Another team that's going to be a tough out in the Big Ten, Tyler, is Oregon. They did to Auburn what they did to 10 different Big Ten teams last year in their victories in conference play, which was just suffocate them defensively. 58-53. Coach told us he didn't want it to be another year of this defensive rock fight performances, but Oh, man. This was a rock fight performance again. But when you're on the road and you're facing a Power 5 team, you just want to win. And Oregon found a way to win. Katie Fiso's playing some great basketball right now for them. And this did look like, hey, remember how we won all those games last year doing this? Let's do it again. And Oregon was dominant defensively again.
Yeah, they were gritty. And Coach Graves, I mean, just another great performance, especially on the defensive end. The kids are all right. We talked about Michigan sophomores a little bit, and that's been one of the biggest storylines in the Big Ten preseason. But you look at what Fiso and Atute are doing as sophomores as well. Yep. Those two willed Oregon in this game. They didn't score the first 3 minutes, the Ducks didn't. In that fourth quarter, they were down 44-40, but they had a cold start to an important time in the game. And then it was what those two did in that fourth quarter that really willed their way. I think Fiso had 13 in the fourth, and Atute had the final 5 for Oregon. So those two are going to be incredibly important for the Ducks this year.
They held Auburn to 20 points in the second half of this game. They were down 9 at the break. They win this game by 5. They're still undefeated, 9-0. This was kind of their first true test of the season. And really good to see them come through with a road win. Another team that I think is in that Indiana camp, it's in the Illinois camp of they're going to be a tournament team, and they're just going to be really hard to beat. And they're going to give you a run for their money. Are they a top 25 team? I don't know. But do you want to go to Eugene and try and play this Oregon team? That sounds like getting your teeth pulled by the dentist like it was last year. And Oregon gets a nice road win over Auburn. Nebraska brought some hardware home from the Emerald Coast Classic. They beat Virginia 91-82. I don't have a whole lot to add to this. Britt Prince is just playing really good basketball. And we're going to talk about her in a minute here. She had another 30-piece, also had 6 assists in this game. I thought Amaya Hargrove coming into the season was one of the most important players on this team as they tried to fill the shoes of Alexis Markowski, and Hargrove continues to play great basketball at 71 points. They honestly probably should have won this game by more. Their defense struggled in the fourth quarter. They lost the quarter by 10 after leading by 19 going into the fourth. They gave up a high percentage shooting to Virginia, but Nebraska controlled this game. Nebraska also undefeated, Tyler. So there's a couple of these teams like Michigan State, Oregon, Nebraska, who are undefeated. We're just kind of waiting on them to get going here. They have a very interesting game on Saturday at Penn State, a game that I think on paper you would favor Nebraska, but that's a good test early in the conference season for Nebraska.
Is this the year of the sophomore in the Big Ten? I mean, Britt Prince is just what she's doing, and she's also shooting 64% from the field.
Yes,
and she's taking the most shots for the Huskers. But I mean, you look at Olsen and Swords and Jelani Cambridge and the tandem in Oregon and Prince. I mean, you can just go on and on and on. But these second year players that get a lot of run their freshman years have great freshman campaigns, and what they take away from that year to carry into year 2 and how they've started off the season, which you always have to take with a grain of salt. But I mean, what these sophomores are doing in the Big Ten to start this campaign has been pretty remarkable.
Well, let's talk about some of the stars of the week in the Big Ten. Britt Prince was on it last week, so I decided to go a different direction, but she was certainly worthy of being on this graphic. But our 3 stars of the week this week, as I pull this up, we've got Shea Chesky. It was hard to not put her up there with what she did against Iowa State. Her IU career high, 38. Her career high is 40. She had that at Penn State. She fouled out with a couple minutes to go. I thought she was going to get there. She was terrific. 26 points against Florida Gulf Coast, 24 points against Gonzaga, and then 38 against Iowa State. Jelani Cambridge, the MVP of the Baja Mar of Ohio State's division of the Baja Mar tournament, averaged 24 points a game in that tournament. And Gabriela Jaquez, just really, really solid. 23 points against Duke, 29 against Tennessee. She's certainly deserving of a star. Let me run through some of the other performances I think were worth shouting out. We mentioned most of these. Kayleen Smeichel, Yarden Garzone, both great against Kentucky. Kennedy Blair, double-double in the win over Clemson. Britt Prince's 30 points. Grace Sullivan, who we're going to talk about here in a second, is playing really good basketball for Northwestern right now. Averaged 26.5 points a game, 11 rebounds a game this week, had 31 and 13 in the loss to Missouri. Jelani Cambridge is on there. Katie Friso, we just mentioned. Gracie Merkel averaged a double-double this week. Nene Njaye from Rutgers is having a great season. Double-double against Northeastern at 26 points against Siena. And Jazzy Davidson got her first career double-double, 20 points and 16 rebounds against Tennessee Tech. So those are your 3 stars of the week from the Dribble Drive. Here's a couple of weird ones for you, and you were there for one of these, Tyler. 2 players in the Big Ten this week nearly got triple doubles with steals. Ava Watson had a double-double in we don't need to spend any time on this game, but 130-32, Ohio State beats Niagara. Ava Watson goes 15 points, 10 rebounds, 7 steals. And then Sarah Parchment for Illinois goes 17 points, 7 rebounds, 10 steals. I mean, you don't see triple doubles. You don't see double doubles that include steals very often. And those 2 were certainly very close to some historic triple doubles.
Yeah, and I'll start off with Watson. Interesting note on her because she came off the bench. She had the first 15-point, 10-assist double-double coming off the bench for Ohio State since Brandy Hoskins did it in 2005.
Wow.
According to StatHead, she is the first Buckeye in a game to have at least 15 points, 10 helpers, and 7 steals. It only goes back as far as, I believe, 1981 in terms of game logs. But she continues to be that second person to handle the ball when Jelani Cambridge is not out there, whether, the West Virginia game when she fouled out, Ava stepped in and she ran the point and had 4 assists, 4 steals, and she actually had probably about 8 steals if you include her getting hands on the ball, forcing a jump ball, and the possession arrow favored the Buckeyes. And then Parchment, just another great freshman for Shauna Green when they've needed her to step up, and she probably was going to be a starter in this lineup already, but because of some factors has had to step into an elevated role. And boy, she has certainly delivered, kind of like what Barry Wallace was last year. Parchment is this year.
Yep, big time. Let's go power rankings. Dalton didn't send me any this week, so I had Tyler jump in and give his top 5. So here are those power rankings. Not a lot of movement for me. Hold on. I need to apologize to Iowa fans. I put a mea culpa out on X last week. I overlooked Iowa last week. They should have been in my top 5. When we recorded the show, I had Washington at 4. I had USC at 5. I forgot about Iowa. I'm just being fully honest to Iowa fans. I apologize. So I redid the graphic, put it out on X, had Iowa at 5. I move them up to 4 this week because Washington is fine. They struggled a little bit with UC San Diego. They were down at halftime to them. I'm not really hurting them that much, but that's the top 5 to me. You snuck the Buckeyes in there, and I think that's totally fair with the way they have played so far this season. USC for me, I'm just because I am OCD. I went ahead and did all 18 on my spreadsheet. I've got USC at 6, Michigan State 7, Ohio State 8. With Indiana and Nebraska right there as well. You text me, you're like, look, anybody could be in that 5 spot right now. I mean, it is, you could go, for me, from 4 to 10, I feel fairly confident any of those teams could beat anybody. And you could even go 4 to 13. I mean, Minnesota has not had a great start to the season. I still think they're dangerous. And Illinois and Oregon can certainly beat you on the right day. But I just think when you start nitpicking, I think the top 3 in this conference is pretty well established at this point, and 4 through whatever you want to make it is a really difficult decision.
No doubt. And I'm sure there are people watching or listening, and they see the Ohio State guy has Ohio State at number 5. And I know what you're thinking. Home cooking, bias, all of the above. But, taking that out, I think that this is the difference between power ranking and just the top 5 teams in the Big Ten right now. I was absolutely torn between Oregon, Washington, Nebraska, Michigan State, and Ohio State. And what Ohio State does have is that ranked win. And that ranked win was incredibly impressive because they had to use all 11 players to win that game. That's probably a game that not many times you win that game. That was a really impressive victory over number 21, West Virginia. Then you end off your stretch of playing 3 games in 6 days and in 2 different countries, just absolutely thumping. Now, again, Niagara, you can't put much stock into that. Jada Pierce, they were a 20 wins team 2 years ago, but this is a team that is going to have a lot of pains this year, so you can't put much stock. But you did score 130 points and you forced 43 turnovers, and your system of play allows that. But I mean, UCLA, they've been through the gauntlet already of just opponents. And Maryland, their strength goes without being said. Michigan, their lone loss being to UCLA, just like Ohio State's. And Ohio State lost 100-68. Michigan lost 72-69. And, maybe you play that game 10 times and the Wolverines win that game maybe more than UConn did. And then Iowa, that win against then number 7 Baylor holds a lot of weight. And they've just had another great start to the season. And seems like Jane Jensen's got this Hawkeyes squad in the right direction.
Here's my thing for Iowa, for USC. They need to be big fans of the teams they have beaten. NC State has not looked good since USC beat them. A little bit why they've dropped in my rankings, because I feel like we bumped them up because we were like, oh, look at this great win. And you have, in my opinion, if you're ranking, and I'm not an AP voter, but I take my Dribble Drive top 5 very seriously. It needs to be limber. It needs to be able to admit one week, hey, USC looked like the second best team in the conference. Now I don't know about that NC State team and the way they lost at Notre Dame. Now I'm going to drop USC a little bit. And I think Iowa, the Baylor win is great. Baylor needs to do something, though, because that's all. I'm a little confused how Iowa has gotten to 11 in the country. They were not ranked at the end of last season. They were a 10-8 team in the Big Ten. And they've beaten Baylor, sure. They've beaten everybody else on their schedule. I'm a little shocked that they have moved as far up as they have in the rankings. I think they're a good team. I don't know if they're a great team, but I had a lower preseason expectation for them than most everyone else did. Ava Hayden has been unbelievable. She has really changed their outlook, and I do think they're better than I had them slated to be preseason. I don't think I would say, yeah, they're a top 11 team in the country just yet, but they're going to get Iowa State coming up, Tyler, and that's going to be a fascinating matchup.
Oh, the Cyhawk on the hardwood is going to be an absolute battle. And I think you're right. I mean, also too, Hannah Stolke, I think that this team is going to be very it's going to be very Stolke reliant just on what she can give you on both ends of the floor. But this is really does it seem like this is the first true post Clark team?
Yeah, it does. And here's my thing, and I think Hannah Stolke's a fine player. If you become Hannah Stolke dependent, Iowa will not get to where they want to be. They've got to get Ava Hayden to do this in Big Ten play. They've got to get production out of Chit Chat right. They've got to get three-point shooting out of McCabe and Feuerbach. They're going to have to find other ways to win, because I think if you become Hannah Stolke dependent, I think she's a good player. I don't think she's a put the team on her back and go score 25 to 30 points and win you a game. So I do think they're going to have to be more balanced. That Iowa State game will be a fascinating matchup. As we get ready to preview the first weekend, a little tease of Big Ten basketball that we get this week. Everybody plays one game, and then we take a break, and then we come back at the end of December and jump fully into Big Ten play. I do want to reset things, though, Tyler, and kind of show the folks who maybe have been football, maybe your teams are done. Maybe your football teams just played their last game and they're like, all right, I'm ready to jump all into football or into basketball, excuse me. Maybe you're like Indiana and they're not ready to do that yet, or Ohio State for that matter. Tyler and I have some rooting interest this Saturday at Lucas Oil Stadium. But here's where we stand right now, the Big Ten standings. There are 6 undefeated teams left in the Big Ten right now. 4 of them are ranked: Maryland, Iowa, Michigan State, and Washington. Oregon is undefeated at 9-0 as well. Nebraska is undefeated at 7-0. Then you've got your one-loss teams. There's plenty of those as well. In fact, 7 of them: UCLA, Indiana, Michigan, Illinois, Northwestern, Ohio State, and Penn State. A couple of teams like Wisconsin, Purdue have struggled out of the gates. They each have 3 losses. USC's dropped a couple. Rutgers has dropped a couple, as well as Minnesota, who I do want to note on Minnesota, and I'm not trying to bury the Gophers. I think they're going to be fine. I love Don Plitzuweit as a head coach. They're struggling offensively right now, though. They have not scored 60 points in any of their last 3 games. So this offense doesn't seem to be clicking right now. I think the Mallory hire loss 2 weeks before the season is really looming right now over Minnesota, but they sit with a 5-2 record at the moment. Going to have a big opportunity against Maryland this weekend at home. That's where the standings are at right now. Just wanted to give people kind of a reset to where we are. The net rankings came out this morning. Here's some notable Big Ten spots. You got UCLA at 4, Michigan at 5, Michigan State 7, Maryland 10, Iowa 11, Nebraska 15, Oregon 16, Minnesota 17, Ohio State 25. That's 9 in the top 25 from the Big Ten in the net rankings. I don't think any of that is too shocking. Minnesota being that high is a little surprising to me. USC being down at 31 is a little surprising to me. That's lower than I thought they would have been. Other than that, though, it's a December 1st net ranking. Anything you take away from that, Tyler?
I definitely, Michigan State being at number 7. I think that's a great win for the Spartans. I think this is a team to really keep an eye out for this year. And I did it. I think it was between them and Ohio State for that number 5 power ranking spot. And my mind keeps going back and forth between those two because, Michigan State, that win against Clemson, incredibly impressive. That's their biggest win. They haven't played many teams in the non-conference slate, but I do think that this can be a really good Sparty team, especially when they're at full strength. And I'm with you. I'm kind of surprised at Minnesota being up that high, but it just seems like year in, year out too. They just unfortunately are snake bit by injuries a little bit. Like last year when Mara Braun Mara Braun goes down after 8 games after she had a great stretch. That's just an unfortunate turn of luck. And, if they can have everybody healthy and figure out how to be more efficient offensively, this is a team that I remember listening to you and Dalton. You guys were really high on them as a sneaky team. And I couldn't agree with you more. And maybe they are down the stretch. I mean, they played a really good Alabama team in the Bahamas, and maybe an outside of the Big Ten takeaway from the net is surprised Alabama is not higher than 24. I think they're 6-0. That's a good squad and a good test for Minnesota.
Also, LSU being number 1 is silly and kind of makes me rethink how much stock I put into the net. LSU hasn't played anybody at all yet this season, and they wound up number 1 because they're just killing everybody. Last thing I wanted to do as a reset was kind of look at the top 4 players in the Big Ten in scoring right now and give some mentions and some celebration to these 4 because they're playing some great basketball right now. Let's start with the leading scorer in the Big Ten. That's Shea Chesky, 24 a game this year. She's in the 50-40-90 club at the moment, 54% from the floor, 46% from 3, and 92% from the free throw line. And again, this is with the highest usage on this Indiana team. She has to put up shots, and she's been very efficient in doing so. And she leads the way right now in the Big Ten in scoring. Right behind her, you've got Gracie Merkel, 23 points a game, just about 9 rebounds a game, and 74% from the floor. Very efficient numbers from Gracie Merkel, who continues to produce for Penn State. Another Grace, just take an eye out of the name. We've got Grace Sullivan. She's been wonderful for Northwestern this year. You kind of wonder when you look at the roster coming in, you're like, okay, Northwestern brings back some players, but somebody's got to take a step up. That person was Grace Sullivan, 22.5 points a game, almost 10 rebounds a game, and shooting the ball at 58% from the floor. She's kind of been a double-double machine for Northwestern this season. And to round out the top 4, and I cut it off because these are all the people averaging 22 points or more per game. Britt Prince, 22 a game, and you mentioned it earlier, Tyler, 64% from the floor, 53% from 3. She's not quite in the 90 club on the free throw percentage, but just an unbelievable start to the year for Britt Prince and Nebraska. So those are your top 4. I think when you come into the season, when you're thinking about best players, none of those 4 were on the preseason All Big Ten team, Tyler. And doesn't necessarily mean they're going to end up on the All Big Ten team when the season ends. I know winning does go into that equation. So if Northwestern and Penn State struggle down the stretch or Indiana doesn't win enough games, sometimes people won't put you on that team. But if you were making an All Big Ten November team, Tyler, these 4 are all on it with the way they have played. And I do want to note that I voted for both Shea Chesky and Britt Prince in the preseason on my All Big Ten teams. They didn't make it, but they were on mine, and they have been terrific so far.
Ostradamus. I mean, that's you called it. Also, I've never been to Lincoln. I'm sure you've been to Lincoln.
Yep.
Is because of just the arena, it looks like it, but maybe it's not. Is that a tough place to shoot 64%?
That I don't know. I'd have to ask the players. It's a tough place to play. It's really hard to play at Pinnacle Bank Arena. That place is awesome. Crowd's great. I would imagine it's hard to shoot 64% anywhere.
Well, yeah.
But certainly, yeah. I mean, what Britt Prince is doing is very special for Nebraska. So that's kind of a reset for those of you who have had maybe one eye on basketball, one eye on football. You would think Lauren Betts, Kayleen Smeichel, Silas Swords, who have all had good seasons. Don't get me wrong. But those are your 4 leading scorers from unranked teams right now. And there is also part of that equation, Tyler, where when you're on a team that isn't UCLA, you become a little bit more dependent on your stars. And so those stars accumulate more points. But these 4 certainly worth getting shouted out for their performances so far. Okay, we've got a lot of Big Ten basketball this weekend. I want to spend time on 4 matchups. But before we do, here's the full schedule for Saturday and Sunday. Indiana at Illinois is a really good one. We're going to talk about that in a second. Noon on Big Ten Network. Saturday as well. Nebraska at Penn State at 1 and Iowa at Rutgers at 6 o'clock. Sunday, there's actually a quadruple header on BTN on Sunday. So if you've been like, man, where's my women's basketball on actual TV? You're going to get it on Sunday because at noon, it's Purdue at Michigan. At 2, it's Ohio State at Northwestern. 3 o'clock, not on BTN, it's Oregon at UCLA. At 4 o'clock, it's Maryland at Minnesota. It's actually it's a quintuple header. Maryland at Minnesota at 4, Michigan State at Wisconsin at 6, Washington at USC at 8 o'clock. Everybody who's broadcasting for BTN has a game on Sunday. It's a quintuple header, Tyler, and it's going to be a lot of fun to see all those games on the Big Ten Network. Obviously, you can always listen to all the games with our wonderful radio people that we have throughout the conference, but it will be nice to get some visuals on these teams. Most of these games, only Nebraska, Penn State is on Big Ten Plus. Everything else is on TV, which is exciting. Which matchup are you most excited about when you look at this schedule, Tyler?
Well, I mean, obviously, you immediately go to Washington and USC, and
Yep.
well, I'm sure we'll get down to it. It's going to be. I mean, it's a great test for this Washington team to gauge where they are, because this will be their best opponent. I think for USC, this is a way for them to show to people that they have what it takes to still be one of the preeminent teams in the Big Ten without Juju, because that's been that's been one of the key question marks. And, Jazzy Davidson's trending in the right direction. But I'm really intrigued by this Nebraska and Penn State game. I mean, with how Penn State went to the portal, not just this year, but the last 2 years, try to turn things around after an abysmal season last year. You bring in Keomi McMiller, and not to say that one person can change the trajectory of a season or of where the program's headed, but you pair her up with Gracie Merkel. I mean, she's just so efficient to do what she's doing and averaging over 20 and almost 9 rebounds a game. This is going to be a great test for her, Britt Prince, and what the Cornhuskers are doing. That's a sneaky matchup, if you even want to call it sneaky.
Yeah, I think the matchup is Britt Prince against Keomi McMiller. I think that's such a fascinating point guard matchup to see those two go at it. I hope they're defending each other. That'd be a lot of fun. Gracie Merkel against Amaya Hargrove down low will be a fun matchup to watch. Who can hit shots? I mean, Mariah Murray's a three-point shooter. Nebraska was one of the best three-point shooting teams in the conference last year with the likes of Callan Hake and Jessica Petrie and Nisley, who has returned back from her injury. We still don't have any Natalie Potts back from her injury quite yet. So who can shoot the three better is going to be a big question as well. But I think that matchup at the top is the one you circle. Britt Prince against Keomi McMiller, two playmakers, two high-level scorers going to be going at it on Saturday. I think this is going to be a shootout. I think this is going to be first to at least 80. Penn State has not played much defense this season. And Nebraska hasn't been tested a whole lot this year and just got lit up in that fourth quarter by Virginia, who shot 50% from the floor for the game and 48% from three. So I think this could have the makings of a good old-fashioned shootout. Before that, on Saturday, we got Indiana at Illinois. This is a fascinating matchup to me because I think these are two teams in very similar spots. They both have one loss on the year away from home against a Power 5 team. And they both are kind of looking at their roster going, okay, what is the potential of this team? When we put it all together, what can this team look like? And so for Illinois, trying to hold – when you're in this middle ground in the Big Ten, you have to win home games. You have to. In this day and age where you're only playing teams one time, the teams you get at home, you got to get those wins. And so for Illinois, they're trying to hold serve and get a home win against a team that, who knows, that tiebreaker could be very important when seeding comes around in March. For Indiana, a road win against one of those teams in your food class could go a long way down the stretch of the season. And I think there's also a scenario here where Indiana plays Western Michigan this week and then 3 other kind of bye games after Illinois. So there's a scenario where Indiana beats Illinois, wins those 4 bye games, and they're 12-1 going into Big Ten play firmly in December and probably a top 25 team at that point, maybe. And so there's a runway here for Indiana. Then they play Minnesota at home. So there's a runway here for Indiana to stack some wins and solidify themselves as a team in the Big Ten Conference. So I think there's a lot on the line Saturday. One thing here, and this is a little minutia, but it's something that I've seen in these matchups, and it's one of the big reasons Indiana went out and got more athletic in the portal, is this matchup right here. Indiana has been exposed throughout the last 3 seasons by Shauna Green's guard play and the high pick and rolls and the quickness of Makira Cook and Genesis Bryant and Adalia McKenzie. And Indiana didn't have quick enough players to handle those situations. And so Illinois is still quick. They've still got great guard play with Barry Wallace and Gretchen Dolan and some of their other Aaliyah Guyton off the bench. Maddie Weber's been playing good basketball. So Indiana has to match. I would think they're going to match up better this year with the guards they have in Nevaeh Caffey, Phoenix Stotine, Shea Chesky. It's a quicker group of guards, but that was something that has haunted Indiana in these matchups against Illinois in the past and will be something to watch for here as Indiana takes on Illinois. Obviously, the health of Zania Soka-Guman is also something to watch for. Would love to get her back for this game as well.
And to your point, I think there's a lot of emphasis on Barry Wallace in this game for Illinois because of what Indiana did to bolster that athleticism and to bolster their backcourt, because Barry Wallace, you go back to last year, she really had to grow up in Big Ten play because they needed her to. And she did. I think she started her final 8-9 games in a crucial stretch for Illinois and just came up big. And she really hasn't looked back since. First off, it's great to see a Columbus area native thrive, Pickerington, Ohio. But all that aside, regionality aside, she's been fantastic to begin the year. And again, this is probably going to be Illinois' biggest test so far. So, a great Big Ten opener against a 7-1 Indiana team that their one loss is to a very good Iowa State team. And I'm sure you probably know better than anybody. I mean, is this Indiana team, like, do they seem, and I know it's been about 24 hours probably by the time this is out, but I mean, this team seems like it's pretty hungry to come back out of the gates after that game against Iowa State.
Very. Just the vibes were not down after that game. I think the vibes were high, not high, but they were fine. And there was motivation to be like, gosh, we just let up 100. This is a better defensive team than what they showed against Iowa State. So I do think they're hungry. This will be a fast, and I think this is just along with that Nebraska-Penn State game. It's teams trying to assert themselves in this conference. And when you play someone else in your weight class, or at least our presumed weight class of you've got to get those wins and those tiebreakers, and that could be the separation when March rolls around. Here's one on Sunday, 4:00 BTN, Maryland at Minnesota. I think 3 weeks ago, this one looked like it might be the matchup of the weekend. Minnesota has struggled here the last couple of weeks to score the basketball, so they aren't necessarily I wouldn't say I'm expecting Minnesota to win this game. Maryland has looked really good. Minnesota has struggled. But as we know, Minnesota's a little bit like Oregon. When you go to Minneapolis, you're going to get a cavity filled by this Minnesota defense. And they're going to play you tough. They're going to make everything difficult. And they're going to try and win this game, I would imagine, 65-60. That's my assumption as to how Minnesota will try and win this game. Now, they haven't scored 60 in their last 3 games. So Minnesota's got to find a little bit more offense. And none of those games have been at home, by the way. They've been at Kansas and then in the Bahamas. So this will be nice for them to be back at the barn, back at home. They've had some players in and out. Tori McKinney has not been playing for them. So hopefully they can get her back. But this is kind of the one you circle as could be the upset pick of the weekend in the Big Ten. Because I think you look at like Iowa at Rutgers, nobody really expects that one to go the other way. Michigan State against Wisconsin, even UCLA, Oregon. I like Oregon, but I don't think in Pauley Pavilion UCLA is going to lose that game. This is the one where you're like, if there's an upset potential in the conference this weekend, it's probably this one.
And for Maryland, if they can put together a convincing win here, Austin, to say that they could pick apart the number 3 scoring defense in the country at this point of the year in the Big Ten opener is probably a good measuring stick for where this Maryland offense can be. And I think it's similar to what we were talking about Michigan State. Can they get more pieces beyond the starting 5 involved offensively? And if they can do that, then boy, we're going to learn about this. We're going to learn a lot more about this Brenda Frese Terp squad.
Yeah, we are. And one more game is the only one between 2 ranked teams this weekend. You said it's the headliner. I think that's fair. It's prime time on Sunday. Washington at USC, 2 top 25 teams who I think you aptly described it, Tyler. For USC, it's kind of a prove it game in the sense of we lost at Notre Dame. I think after they lost that game, people kind of stopped talking about USC here for the last couple of weeks. This is a chance for them to get right back on the mat, especially at home. Got to protect your home court. And for Washington, it's a prove-it game because nobody's talked about Washington really all season in the national landscape of things. Great to see Ella Dean come back this past week. Hopefully that means she's going to be good to go for this game. And we're finally going to see this Washington team at full strength. Xavier Sellers has been really good. They've gotten really good production out of their freshmen. in this lead up to Big Ten Conference play. Bryn McGaughy. I don't think I'm saying that right, by the way. I apologize to Bryn. I know that I will look at the pronunciation guide the next time I say it. But Bryn has been really good this year and has given them great production off the bench. Now you throw a high-level scorer in El Wadine back into this blender, and I think a good concoction is going to come out for Washington. I think Washington wins this game, Tyler. I think that's my bold prediction today, is that Washington goes on the road, beats USC.
I agree with you, and I think their defense has been stifling. They're playing disciplined basketball. They're not fouling many teams. They're holding opponents to a 32% clip. That's top 15 in the country, and teams are only scoring 47 points against them. And regardless of maybe you look at Washington's schedule and you don't look too much into that, I totally get it. But anytime you can hold a team under 50 points through 7+ contests, that's always a big thing. I think the paint battle could be interesting here. USC they're a good shot blocking team, and they don't really have anybody can block shots. These are two pesky teams, and I think USC too. They got to take care of the rock, because that's been their MO. Even without Juju out there, they're still top 25 in assist to turnover ratio. They're sharing the ball incredibly well. I think 17th in the country in assists per game. But I do think Washington's going to come away with a win here, Austin. I agree with you 100%. And USC, that 5-2 record doesn't indicate probably where they're at, because of they lost the real USC battle.
They did. We have to start calling them Southern Cal. I don't know why I'm not putting that on the graphic. They lost the title of USC. That'll be the running joke on this show all season.
And then the Notre Dame game, you lose in a buzzer beater from Hannah Delgo. Like, that's you have to buy stock into more of how they played that game in South Bend, rather than buying stock into that loss. So, but Washington having El Wadine back and how
huge.
much she can play beyond the 15-minute threshold. That if she can give you 20+, if she can give you some quality minutes and a quality start, look out, because this Husky team could certainly give Coach Langley a huge boost this year.
Avery Howell back in her old stomping grounds for Washington, playing against her former team in LA. Curious who's going to guard Jazzy Davidson. She's going to be a mismatch for a lot of teams this year, but her size at the guard position could be tough to match up with for Washington, who has a lot of smaller guards who run the show there. But this is a fascinating matchup, going to be a lot of fun. Well, we've gone pretty long here, Tyler. I appreciate you hanging with us. This has been a fantastic episode. We got Big Ten basketball this week, which is really exciting. We finally get to stack some of these teams against each other and see how they stack up. And I think our power rankings could shake up a little bit come next Monday. Hopefully we'll get Dalton back next Monday. But Tyler has been a great fill-in. Matt Park was great last week. Tyler, we appreciate you jumping in, and thanks for joining us on the show.
Anytime, Austin. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we appreciate you all listening. If you watched us on YouTube, we appreciate that. Give us a subscribe to the Back Home Network YouTube channel to let you know when we go live. You can always find us on Apple and Spotify podcasts. Leave a rating. Let us know how we are doing. And tell a friend. Continue to grow the show. Follow us on X as well. Dribble Drive WBB. A lot of graphics and additive content on there as well. For Tyler Danburg, I'm Austin Renders saying so long on episode 7 of the Dribble Drive.